Good morning and welcome to your e-learning day for February the 12th. A little bit of a surprise, I think, to everybody. We are at the start of our next chapter, and I will just say right from the top, in looking at the textbooks for this chapter, I have realized that part of the reason some of you may have experienced the last time that I was gone from school, where you had to do your one big thing assignment, you may have noticed that some of the sections were not in the chapter. I believe it was chapter 27 that I had said that they would be in, and that's because this is the point where there's a little bit of a shift in between the old and the new textbooks. So some of your section headings that I had said were in chapter 27. If you had the old book, they were actually probably in chapter 28 in the old book. So for this chapter 28, I believe this is chapter 28 in the old book and chapter 28 in the new book and chapter 29 in the old book, or vice versa. So please don't let that be too much of a hang up. I understand it's a headache, not everybody having the same book, but it's one of those things that we just kind of have to deal with. Irregardless of which chapter number this is, we are now talking about progressivism, and this is going to be what's going on while we're at home. So we just got done talking about the Spanish-American War and American imperialism. We're now sort of turning our attention to the domestic affairs, things that are going on back here at home, and that's going to be our focus. So regardless of what the chapter number is, that's our topic at hand. Now, for today, I just want to get us started on this chapter. I have a point that I want to get to in this video. I don't know that I'll be able to get there in the time that we have left, and that's fine. The assignment, as it were, for you guys today is just follow along and make sure you are writing your notes down as you would if we were in class. I will say, however, that because I am not at school, while I do have my school computer that I can do these videos on, I do not have the ability to underline the text that you have to write down. So it's going to become even more important for you to listen, to pay attention to the things that you need to write down. I will make it a point to say, hey, you need to write this down, but you're actually going to have to really pay attention and follow along as we go through this. So with that being said, we'll just begin. This is Progressivism and the Republican Roosevelt. Roosevelt is pictured down there in the bottom. It's one of my favorite. I guess it's a meme. Where it talks about, I don't always get shot in the chest during the middle of a speech, but when I do, I finish the speech. This is something that we'll get to. This is after Roosevelt has been in office. He goes to run for president again when he is much older, and there's an attempt on his life in the middle of a speech, but the speech was so long and the text of it was folded up in his pocket and was so thick that the bullet actually glanced off of the paper, and was a non-fatal wound. And rather than go immediately to the hospital, he did, finish the speech before being tended to. And that's just kind of, again, as we saw a little bit, Roosevelt is a bit of an adventurer, the head of the Rough Riders, etc. So, that's one of my favorite little bits of knowledge about Roosevelt. So the goals of progressives, these are the things that, what are the things that progressive leaders want? Okay, and this will give you a little bit of an idea of what a progressive is. And so, if you're looking there under section 1, this is a movement. This is the part that you would write down. If you're looking to define the movement, the progressive movement, it is a movement to give political power back to citizens. That is sort of the first part of this. The second part is to improve the economy. And thirdly, the idea is that by achieving those first two things, we're going to make American life better, or at least accomplishing those first two things is going to go a long way to making American life better. So again, as you're writing your notes, you want to define what a progressive is. or what the progressive movement is. It is a movement to give political power back to citizens, improve the economy, and make American life better. So how are we going to do that? Well, sort of working backwards from that definition in terms of making life better. Social welfare. So again, the next thing that I would write down is they're going to look to protect social welfare through things like the YMCA. So I would just write that down. And then whatever else on that line that happens to catch your eye. The Salvation Army is a specific group that's set up to help poor immigrants. Again, it's not something that you have to write down, but that would be an interesting little bonus question. Florence Kelly, who is pictured there to the right, she's going to lobby for child labor laws, limited working hours. These are all under the heading of social welfare. Jane Addams, also pictured to the right and down at the bottom, is going to found the Hull House in Chicago. So again, sort of sifting through what you would need to write down. I would just, under social welfare, would write the YMCA, would write the Salvation Army, is to help poor immigrants. I would write down the names of Florence Kelly and Jane Addams. And then however you want to sort out how to remember who those two people are. I'm not going to tell you that you have to write down exactly what's up there. On the whole, and this is important, on the whole, reformers tended to be middle class folk, and they tended to be women. Okay, that's something that's going to be important to keep in mind throughout this, is that these reformers tend to be middle class and tend to be women. Okay, and there is a sort of level of education, a base level of education that they tend to at least fall into. And we'll talk more about that as we go. So that gives you some idea of who these people are and sort of what they're trying to accomplish. Feel free to pause at any point, so that you can write down anything that you feel is important. These are just some pictures of the Hull House in Chicago. And then this is also where we're going to start to get into moral improvement. So you see the picture there to the left, the famous and original barroom smasher, Carrie Nation. And that's Carrie Nation pictured there, because Carrie Nation is going to be one of the first people. So if you're writing, the second point is to promote moral improvement. So you write that down. One of the first things that's going to come up is prohibition. And so as you're writing prohibition down, you may not even need to write this down because you may know it already. But if you don't know, prohibition is the banning of alcoholic beverages. And Carrie Nation is going to be sort of the figurehead for this movement. You see her there with her Bible and her hatchet. And it was not uncommon for Carrie Nation to enter into a bar with her Bible, yelling biblical verses about the ills of alcohol, and taking her hatchet and smashing the bottles of liquor that were there in the bar. The Women's Christian Temperance Movement, Temperance Union, which you could abbreviate the WCTU. This is historically the largest group for women in history, and they are promoting prohibition. Okay, they're discouraging barkeepers. They're urging what's called temperance. They are promoting the idea that we need to get rid of alcohol. This is eventually going to lead to, obviously, when we think of prohibition at large, we're going to think of the 18th Amendment, which bans alcohol throughout the country. We will get there eventually. So again, improving the moral standing in the United States. We're talking about prohibition, the Women's Christian Temperance Union. Okay. Economic reform. This is sort of the third thing that progressives are trying to push out there. Eugene V. Debs, again, last names are really the only thing that counts in history. Debs, he begins the Socialist Party in 1901. And he is one of many people that is sort of points out this uneven balance between big business, government, and citizens. under capitalism. So he starts to notice that the average citizen sort of is losing out on all of the profit gains that are going to big business, and that the government is just sort of sitting idly by and letting this happen. And so he forms the Socialist Party in 1901. Debs is from Terre Haute, Indiana, rather famously ran for president from prison. I think we spoke about that a little bit when we were talking about sort of the formation of unions and things like that. He now has officially founded the Socialist Party in 1901. There's also this term called muckrakers. These are journalists, and that word is who. Journalists who try to show the corrupt side of big business. We're going to look at several photos. They may even be coming up here on these next slides, and even if they're not, we're going to talk about a lot of photos in class, a lot of political cartoons. There's a lot of what we would call today exposés written, where they sort of expose not only the corrupt side of big business, but also there's the infamous meatpacking scandal in Chicago, where they find out that there's some not very sanitary conditions in the meatpacking industry, and that becomes something that is a flashpoint for a lot of people throughout the country, and we owe that all to muckrakers. So again, as you're writing down your notes, economic reform is sort of the third heading under how progressives are going to get their aims accomplished. You're talking about Debs being the founder of the Socialist Party in 1901, and muckrakers are these journalists who are showing the corrupt side of big business. Sort of a sidebar, what is socialism? And we've talked about this already, and so I don't really feel the need to spend too much time on it. You see the picture of Bernie there in the top right. So again, just kind of flashing through that because we have already kind of touched on it. These are some of your muckrakers. Ida Tarbell. So just some notable muckrakers. Again, you can just write these names down for now. We will dive deeper into them throughout this chapter. Ida Tarbell is pictured there on the top. She attacks Standard Oil. Upton Sinclair is a journalist who writes The Jungle. That's where we're talking about the Chicago meatpacking industry. It's kind of gross, but we'll read a little bit of it in class. And then finally down there at the bottom is this guy named Jacob Riis and How the Other Half Lives. He is a photographer. This is the era where photography becomes, as we discussed with the Spanish-American War and the pictures taken of the Maine and Havana Harbor. This is the time period where photography really takes off and becomes sort of a flashpoint. This is not pictured, but then we also get magazines like Collier's, McClure's. You'll notice Cosmopolitan. Cosmopolitan today is thought of as, a women's magazine, but in its original inception, it was actually intended to be a political magazine that was designed to be a sounding board for the progressive movement. So those are sort of some of your muckrakers. Again, the names are what's important for now. You don't have to write anything else; just their names will do for now, as we will dive deeper into them later. We're going to stop there at fostering efficiency. Just for a couple of notes. One, make sure that you are that you've written down to the best of your ability the things that I've asked you to write down. Again, I understand that it's difficult because I don't have the ability to underline like I normally would, but I've tried to sort of stop along the way and tell you, hey, this is what you need to have in your notes so that we're moving forward. I will be posting this, a link to this. Your e-learning for the day is going to just be to get through these and write your notes down. Again, if you're one who the internet is not working at your house, I understand given the icy conditions, that is fine. You'll just have to make it up when you are at school on Tuesday. Or whenever, so you might be listening to this and you might not actually be at home, you might be at school on Tuesday. Secondly, your idea proposals for your movies are also due on Wednesday, February the 14th. That is an e-learning day. So make sure that you are talking to your group. Hopefully you created a document to share between all of your group members. And that's all that I have, guys. So I'll see you